Hi, here's a little demo on the self-muscle testing content. The previous video had some slides with different strategies for how to muscle test yourself. I'm going to demonstrate some of these for you guys on screen, and I encourage you to practice these along with me. Now, remember I said you're probably not going to love all of these strategies. Some of these are going to feel confusing or hard to interpret, or you might get kind of wonky results at first. And if that's the case, just put it aside. It's not your favorite, no big deal. There's probably going to be one of this what do we got? Seven or so techniques we're going to try that stands out to you that feels a little bit easier to interpret, that's a little more consistent for you and feels simpler to practice. So just focus on that once you find it. But let's try all of them at least once just to kind of get a feel for what they're like and see which ones stand out the most to you. So the tests I'm going to have you do now are tests that we're going to use statements for. When you're doing muscle testing, you're often using a statement to determine whether it's a strong or weak response instead of a question. The exception would be if you're using something like a pendulum, something like this to muscle test. You might want to use a question because it's going to be a little bit more clear response for the pendulum. I'm not going to show you a lot of with the pendulum today. I will show you a couple examples of pendulums here while we're talking about it. There are some really great classes that talk about how to interpret pendulum responses and how to use pendulums in muscle testing. Same concept applies here as the other stuff I'm going to show you, where you're going to have a electrochemical sort of energy that's at your fingertips that this device that you're holding is reading and swaying a certain way based on a yes or a no response from your subconscious, from your autonomic nervous system. So it's the exact same concept. Pendulums aren't this woo weird thing that I think a lot of people have misconceptions about, but they're actually great tool. And for some people, it's easier to use a pendulum than it is to do these other tests I'm about to show you. So I'll put a link to a course that I took. It's, I think, maybe like a 45-minute course on how to use a pendulum for muscle testing. If you ever want to learn how to do that in your spare time, it's definitely something you could play with, but I'm not going to teach you the ins and outs of the pendulum today. So with the pendulum, we're asking yes or no questions. We're going to put that over here. With the rest of these techniques that we're going to try today, we're using statements instead of questions. An example of the difference would be, my name is Amber. That's a statement versus, is my name Amber? Question, right? So it just depends how we're saying the question. These techniques I'm about to show you are going to have more obvious or clear responses when we're using a statement. So the first one on the list, if you're following the order of the slides, was the sway test. That's a standing up test. So I'm going to have you stand up right now. I'm going to step away, so hopefully you can still see me here. The sway test is the concept of putting your feet about shoulder width apart. I'm going to show you from the side here, but essentially when you do this test, you're going to make a statement and see if your body naturally, after you say the statement out loud, falls backwards a little bit into your heels, or if your weight kind of goes forward a little bit towards your toes. Or I suppose you could stay neutral as well. Most of the time, though, there's like a very subtle energy that goes forward or backward when you make a statement. So, for example, I'll start with a statement, have you start with a statement that's true to you. I'm going to have you use a statement about your first name. So in my example, I'm going to say my name is Amber and see which way I sway. But before I demonstrate that, I want you to actually try this with your name, your first name. So go ahead and stand there, feet about shoulder width apart. I want you to say it out loud. My name is blank. Say your first name. And I want you to observe whether a sway happens forward or backwards. Okay, so go ahead and try that right now. I don't want to give away the response of this just yet. I want you to try that first. So go ahead and do that a couple of times. Stand, feet shoulder width apart. Say the statement, my name is blank. Insert your name there and see which way your body sways. Does it sway forward or back? If your energy is well balanced, the proper response to this test is as follows. I'm going to give you two examples. I'm going to say, my name is Amber. Immediately, my weight shifts forward a little bit into my toes. My name is Jessica. Immediately, I start to go backwards and have to catch myself. So the yes, the truth to this type of sway test is a forward shift. And the no, or the false statement, is going to be a backward shift. So I'm curious, was that the case for you? Did you sway forward when you said your name? And you can try it a couple more times. Maybe try it saying something that's completely false, like somebody else's name, and see if that forward and backward shift is true for you. If it is not, like let's say you sway backwards when you say your name instead of forward, that might just have to do with energy balancing in your body. And if you work on that, and I'll teach you some tips for that at the end here, you can try it again and see if it's being more accurate in terms of that. Forward is a yes, truth. Backward is a no, false. So that's the sway test. These other ones I'm going to show you here might be a little bit easier to do, particularly if you're looking to test a lot of things over time without, one by one going through question or sort of a statement at a time with the sway standing up test. This will make more sense later as we kind of look at things we can muscle test. But there is another one that's kind of like the sway test I'm going to show you first, and then I'll show you kind of the simpler ones that are a little bit faster to do, quick to kind of pick up on. There's another one called the overhead clap. I learned this at a conference this year. I think it's kind of fun. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use a statement for my first name that's true. I want you to do the same thing at home, saying your first name out loud. So I'm going to say, my name is Amber. I'm going to clap right over the top of my head with both hands. My name is Amber. And then I'm going to say, my name is Katie. You see how my hand is off center a little bit here? My name is Elizabeth. So for my no on that, my left hand is traveling further here and I'm away from midline when I clap, not quite centered. When I say my name is Amber, I'm right over the center of the top of my head. It's a very subtle shift. It helps to do this one in the mirror at first so you can see where your hands land, especially if your proprioception is a little bit off. But in the case of the overhead clap test, a true statement is going to land you right over the midline of your head, and something that's a false or a no is going to bring you off to one side, either side, it seems like, for most people. So that's the overhead clap test. The hole-in-one is basically making a ring with your finger and taking your pointer finger of your other hand and kind of inserting it into the ring where those fingers meet. And you're going to apply a little bit of tension. You don't want to stress out your joints with tons of like muscle into these tests. So they're subtle, but you're going to apply a little bit of equal and opposite pressure. This hand pulling this way, this hand going more this way. And you're going to kind of match your own resistance there and just kind of feel that tension there. Once you've got that set up, you're going to make your statement and see what happens. So for this type of a test, a strong response where the fingers do not break and they stay firm is a yes. And if the fingers break like that and your finger starts to slide out, that's a no. Okay, so that's a weak response. This right here, this hold is a strong response. So what generally happens with this one is you feel pretty strong here, you say your statement, and it starts to feel a little slippery. It may not be this exaggerated break every time, but you're going to feel a difference in that tension. It might be a little bit more subtle than what I'm demonstrating. Kind of exaggerating this a little bit so you get the point. But for the hole-in-one, you could do the same thing with your name as an example if we keep using that. So for me, I'm going to say my name. You can try this at home and say your name out loud as a statement. My name is Amber. Stays nice and strong. Now I'm going to say, my name is Brittany. And immediately my fingers can't hold that tension because that's a false statement. That's a no answer. So that's the hole-in-one technique. Now there's a very similar one called the ring, what do we call it? Ring and ring. I actually think this one's one of the easiest ones to learn. So you're going to make two rings with your thumb and your pointer finger and loop your fingers together. It's almost just like the one we just did, except instead of just one finger being there, you're connecting your thumbs. And then you're going to kind of rotate your hands to where you've got a good firm pressure and you're kind of pulling that way with both arms. You've got your rings locked here, doing the same thing. My name is Amber. Say your name, obviously. And then my name is Stephanie. I immediately start to feel a break. My name is Andrea. See, I feel a break immediately. So again, the statement that's correct, your actual name is going to stay strong. The statement that's weak should give like that. Now be careful what questions you use or what names you use. One time I was doing this in a demo and I said, my name is Marie, and it was strong because that's my middle name. So, obviously your first name, middle name, last name, any variation of that or something that sounds like that might confuse the nervous system for a second. So that's the ring and ring. The hand solo technique is where This is actually the one I use the most now, but at first I thought this one was really tricky. So you could try it and see if you like it. But essentially what you're doing with this one is, for me, I'm taking the middle finger and the pointer finger and putting those together with the middle finger on the bottom. And I'm applying some downward pressure with the finger that's on top, just past the knuckle here of this finger. So I'm just kind of in between the knuckles on the finger itself, applying some downward pressure. The strong response is going to be like you might feel that kind of lock happen, but the finger's not going to bend at that knuckle. It's going to stay straight. So you might have a little movement there on a strong, but it's not going to do a total crash or collapse like that. The weak is going to be this, right? Or the no answer is going to be this. So if I say, my name is Amber, my name is Amber, my name is Amber, it's staying strong. If I say, my name is Michael, immediately it goes weak. It can't maintain that pressure. So again, strong versus weak on the hand solo test. You can play with that one. That one takes a lot of practice in my experience before it kind of just clicks as a motor skill. But once you get good at it, it's a really easy way to test a whole bunch of different things really quickly. So from a clinician perspective, it's a nice one that you can use while your other hand is contacting other things as you get into more advanced forms of muscle testing. But if that one doesn't feel good for you, or if that's affecting joints in your hands or feeling uncomfortable in that way, no worries, you can skip it and move to the next. The finger slide is probably even a little more complicated to feel at first because it's a more subtle muscle response. So the finger slide can be done in a number of ways. You can slide one finger on top of the other and kind of feel any friction or tension or resistance there. You can actually slide, let's see, where's my pen? You can grab a pen that's kind of, got a good texture on it, and you can actually slide one of your fingers along the smooth surface of the pen to kind of feel the friction and tension there. Or you can actually slide, if we're looking at the surface of a table, you can slide your finger along the surface of a table. This is a little bit harder on wood tables, but it depends on the substance your table's made out of. You can kind of slide your finger on a smooth surface like that and feel the friction. And then what you're going to do, depending on whatever surface you end up sliding on, however you do it, you're going to do your statements again. So just observing the difference in how the finger slides when you say a truth versus a lie. So for example, use your name again. My name is blank. My name is Amber. I'm feeling that smooth, sort of uninterrupted, easy. That's a yes. No friction, no kind of catching, no stickiness there. Just a smooth slide would be a yes. Now, if I say, my name is Jennifer, it's harder. It's almost like my finger gets stuck on that surface. Like the resonance changes a little bit and it doesn't want to, it's kind of like doesn't want to move there. And the same thing would happen on the table or if you were sliding your finger on your other finger, etc. So again, for this finger slide test, a smooth, frictionless glide of the skin over that surface is a yes. And a kind of more friction-based, stuck little moments. It might not be resistance the whole way, but you're feeling some kind of tension on there, like it's a little bit rougher of a surface, would be the no or the weak response. Okay, the flick test. With this one, basically you're making a position in your hand, like you're gonna flick your middle finger off of your thumb. Or some people will do their pointer finger as well. I like to do my middle finger. I feel like I get a better read on it. You could probably try your ring finger as well on this one. So figure out which finger feels most natural to kind of make the okay sign with and to flick your finger like that with it. And then you're going to kind of match that resistance. It's almost like this finger is kind of pushing that way. The thumb is pushing into it just lightly, just kind of matching that resistance. Maintain that tension there and then do your statement. So my name is Amber. Stay strong. Nothing moves. Everything's normal there. If I say my name is Joseph, immediately this fingernail slides off of the thumb like it can't stay there because that's not a truth. And so energetically, it's going to flick. So strong response would be doesn't move, holds that position, maintains that tension. Weak response would be there's a little give there and that finger kind of either completely lets go like that and flicks or it starts to kind of move. That would be the no response. So those are some of the simplest ways to muscle test yourself. I would say out of all the ones on this list, the sway test that I showed you standing up at the very beginning is probably the easiest one to like really feel the obvious change in your energy when you do that one. These other ones are a little more subtle and they take practice. So you can definitely play with them. If there's one or two that stood out to you that felt a little easier as we were practicing them just now, maybe write those down and play with them and practice them over and over until they feel really natural. Now, one thing I wanted to do as part of this demo was to just put it all together. So these are the strategies, but let's talk about kind of how we make sure we're balanced enough to do this muscle testing. And if you found that any of the things I just showed you weren't really working, like everything was strong or everything was weak, or maybe you had a paradoxical reaction, like saying your name was actually weak and saying something else was strong, don't worry. There's physiological reasons for that. We're going to talk about why that happens and what to do there. But first, let's just go through the sequence of, okay, I'm going to muscle test myself for something. The first thing you want to do is just pause and take a moment to get centered, get grounded. Maybe come to your back to your breath or your body in some way. You could do a nervous system technique like a long exhale breath, for example, maybe some alternate nostril breathing, maybe that self-hug exercise or something else is kind of getting you back into your body for a minute or two. Just kind of help your energy get grounded so that you can better interpret the muscle test response. Then you're going to do a check for balance. This is the part that can confuse people a little bit, but it's actually pretty simple. We just kind of did it with that demo. So the check for balance can either be a name test, like my name is blank, and then obviously saying my name is something else, something that's not true, to make sure that your correct answer is staying strong and the incorrect answer is going weak. You can also use that for like a country or a place, like, you know, I live in Mexico. I live in Canada, right? You can play with different things that are true and false to you to figure out, geographically, or use some other facts that are really obvious about your life to play with this balance test. Once you've done the balance test, then you can go into muscle testing the other things that you're curious about. The other way you can test your balance is actually a forehead test. Right here, we have kind of an energy center. And when we put our palm to this spot right between our kind of our eyebrows there at the top of our nose, palm, either close to the skin or touching the skin, we should have a strong response on the muscle. So if we come back to, let's say, the finger press test, this is a strong response. If I put my hands here, fingertips towards this spot on my face, this should stay strong. However, if I flip around and put my fingernails or the back of my hand on that point, I'm going to have a hard time maintaining that strong hold. It's going to collapse. It's going to be weak. So the fingernail towards that point, weak. Finger pad towards that point should be strong. Okay, so that's just the forehead test. A lot of people use that really quick in clinic. Strong this way, weak this way. Okay, I'm balanced. I'm ready to go. I can go ahead and start muscle testing this particular person or this particular thing. So again, if you're not getting that correct response there, where fingernail is weak and finger pad or palm of the hand is strong, that might suggest we need to do an extra step before you're ready to start muscle testing yourself. Same for the name test or the place test. If those aren't coming back accurate for you, it might just be that the energy in your body needs to do a little bit of work, or you might be really dehydrated or something. So there's a couple things you can do for that. For example, if you're getting paradoxical reactions, like let's say what should be strong is actually weak and what should be weak is actually strong if you're using like a factual statement. Then you can do something called cross crawls, where it's kind of an alternating cross-body movement to help the body's energy shift into more accuracy for muscle testing. So cross crawls could be something like opposite knee to opposite hand, and you could do this sitting or standing, but you can just go back and forth, cross your body, and just go through this for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, and then retest and go, my name is Amber. My name is Jessica. There. I'm good. I've got the correct forward response and the incorrect backward response, so that must have worked. Now, if you do that and you go, my name is Amber, and I'm just going to make up a response here. Like you go backwards, the opposite of what's expected. Then you want to come back and do some more of this if you're getting that paradoxical response, and then retest that question again. Let's say both are weak. Like let's say you do your name test and you sway backwards, or you get a weak response with one of the hand tests. And then let's say you do the fake name thing and you also get a backwards sway, or you also get a weak response. So everything's just testing weak. Everything's kind of, having that collapse to it on muscle testing. Then there's a couple things going on. You're most likely maybe a little bit dehydrated or need some electrolytes. So you could literally go and just drink a little bit of electrolytes or get a little more hydrated, come back and test again, and chances are that your test would be correct at that point. You could also try an energy pull, which might raise the energy in your body to a level where that muscle testing is going to be a little bit more easy to interpret. So the energy pull is going to be going from your belly button area up to your forehead or the top of your head even. You're just going to pull energy. So you can either have your hands literally on your body or just like an inch or two away from your body. And you're just going to pull energy up and over to the top of the head. Kind of hard to show you guys this one on Zoom. And then you're going to do that 3 times. So belly button up to the top of the head, sweeping up, trying to get your energy up in your body so that instead of having a weak muscle response, you have a strong, weak response. Then you're going to go back to your test, either the name test, the place test, or the balancing test that we did with the fingernail versus the pad of the finger at the nose, and make sure you're getting a strong response as a yes and a weak response as a no, as it should be. Now, let's say you get a strong and a strong. Like, let's say I say, I'll show you this standing up. Let's say I say, my name is Amber, get a strong response. My name is Brittany. I also sway forward. So both of those answers are a strong response or a yes response, even though they technically should not be. Then that just means kind of the opposite of the weak and weak, where maybe there's too much energy kind of circulating in your body and you want to do an energy pull the other way. So instead of going from the belly button up to the top of the head like we just did, for this scenario where you're getting a strong and a strong, you'd actually want to do the energy pull from the top of the head and bring it down all the way to the belly button. And you want to do that at least 3 times. Top of the head, pulling the energy down, top of the head, pulling the energy down, and then repeat that test to see if you're getting a strong where it should be strong and a weak where it should be weak. So those are some strategies. If your balancing test at the very beginning is a little bit off, play with those and see if that helps you kind of get a more obvious muscle response so that you can practice this stuff. We did about 7 different techniques today. There's many more out there. If you Google this or look at YouTube, you're probably going to find a lot of really great resources on how to muscle test yourself, much more eloquent than this one. So I encourage you to, if you're curious about this, if this is something you're like, wow, this is interesting, I really want to get good at this, really do a deep dive into what's out there, because there's a lot of free resources and a lot of ways to learn this. If you're a practitioner, as I mentioned, there are some really wonderful organizations that put on trainings for how to muscle test yourself and your clients. And I strongly encourage you get a more formal version of training of this. It can really be an incredible tool clinically and beyond.